The morning sun on Kepler 442b should have been warm and gentle. Instead, it burned like fire in the sky. Dr. Veltar pressed his thin blue fingers against the observation window and watched the angry orange light dance across the clouds. His people had lived on this world for 300 years. They had never seen their sun act like this. "The readings are getting worse," said his assistant Kira. Her voice shook as she spoke. "The solar storms are growing stronger every hour." Veltar turned away from the window. The research station hummed with worried voices and beeping machines. Screens showed numbers that made his stomach feel sick. The star that gave life to their world was about to kill them all. "How long do we have?" he asked. Kira looked at her tablet. Her hands moved quickly across the screen. "Maybe 5 days. 6 at most. The big flare will hit us then. It will burn away our atmosphere, boil our oceans. Nothing will survive." Around them, other scientists worked at their computers. They had been sending the same message for 2 days now. A call for help that reached out across the empty space between stars. The message was simple and desperate. "This is the Zephyrian colony on Kepler 442b. Our sun is dying. We need help. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." The planet had 4 million people. 4 million souls who looked up at their angry sun each day and knew they were going to die. The children still played in the streets, but their parents watched the sky with fear in their eyes. In the capital city, the government worked day and night. They tried to build ships to escape, but they did not have enough. They tried to build shelters underground, but the solar fire would be too hot. They tried to stay calm, but panic grew like a disease through the cities. Then the first answer came. The message arrived from the Galactic Humanitarian Council. It was formal and polite, full of big words that made Veltar read it 3 times to understand. "Greetings, Zephyrian people. We have received your distress call. The Council has reviewed your situation and has approved emergency assistance. Our rescue fleet will arrive in your system within 4 standard days. Please prepare for organized evacuation according to Council Protocols 7.4 through 9.2. All civilians must register with the attached forms. Evacuation will proceed in orderly groups based on age, health, and social priority. Please remain calm and follow all instructions." The message came with hundreds of pages of rules and forms to fill out. Veltar felt some hope, but also worry. 4 days. They might have 6 days before the big solar flare hit. It would be close. Very close. News of the rescue spread across the planet. People cried with relief. They hugged each other in the streets. The government quickly began organizing registration centers. Lines formed outside buildings as millions of people waited to fill out the forms that might save their lives. But far across the galaxy, another ship had heard the same desperate call for help. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the cargo bay of the Defiant Scrap and looked at the mess around her. Boxes of mining equipment sat next to broken robot parts. A pile of old engine pieces leaked oil onto the metal floor. The ship smelled like fuel and sweat and years of hard work. "Captain, you need to hear this," called Marcus from the bridge. His voice echoed through the ship's old speakers. Sarah walked through the narrow hallways of her ship. The walls were covered with patches where meteors had hit them. Some of the lights flickered. The floor shook with each step because the artificial gravity was broken in places. The Defiant Scrap was ugly. It had been a cargo ship once, built to carry supplies between mining stations. But years of hard use had changed it into something else. Sarah and her crew had added armor plating from old military ships. They had mounted mining lasers that could cut through asteroids. They had welded extra fuel tanks to the outside hull. They had rebuilt the engines 3 times with whatever parts they could find. The ship looked like a flying junkyard, but it was strong. It could go places that fancy ships could not. It could survive things that would kill other vessels. Sarah reached the bridge and saw her crew gathered around the communication station. Marcus, her second in command, was a big man with scars on his hands from years of fixing broken machines. Elena, their pilot, had bright eyes that never seemed to worry about anything. Tom, the engineer, was thin and quiet, but he could make any machine work even when it should be dead. "What have you got?" Sarah asked. Marcus played the message. The desperate voice of Dr. Veltar filled the bridge, speaking in the common galactic language. His words were full of fear and hope. "This is the Zephyrian colony on Kepler 442b. Our sun is dying. We need help. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." The bridge went quiet. Sarah looked at the star charts on the main screen. Kepler 442b was far away, but not impossible to reach. "How long to get there?" she asked Elena. The pilot's fingers danced over her controls. 3 days if we push the engines hard. 4 if we want to arrive in one piece. Tom spoke up from his corner. "The engines need maintenance. We have been running them too hard for too long. And we are low on fuel and food and almost everything else." Sarah nodded. She knew her ship was held together by luck and stubborn will. Every jump through hyperspace was a risk. Every landing was a prayer that the hull would not crack. But she also knew something else. Somewhere out there, 4 million people were looking up at a dying sun and waiting for someone to help them. "Marcus, send a message back," she said. "Tell them we are coming." "Captain," Tom said quietly, "we are not a rescue ship. We are barely a working ship. What can we do that the big rescue fleets cannot?" Sarah smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had survived in the dark spaces between the stars, where only the strong lived. "We can do what we always do, Tom. We can get there first, and we can do whatever it takes." The defiant scrap changed course toward the dying system. Behind them, the elegant ships of the Galactic Humanitarian Council prepared for a careful, organized rescue. Mission: none of them knew that the humans were coming. The Council ships arrived like floating palaces in the dark of space. 7 vessels hung in perfect formation outside the Kepler 442 system. Each ship was a work of art. Their hulls shined like mirrors. Their lines were smooth and graceful. Blue lights marked their elegant shapes against the stars. Admiral Zixthara stood on the bridge of the flagship and watched the angry orange glow of the dying star. She had led rescue missions before, but never one this large. 4 million lives hung in the balance. "Report," she said to her second officer. "We have established communication with the planetary government. They are organizing registration centers as instructed. Current estimate shows we can evacuate approximately 2 million individuals before the solar event." Admiral Zixthara felt her 4 stomachs twist. "Only half?" "Yes, Admiral. Council regulations require proper documentation for each evacuee. Medical examinations, background checks, priority assessments. The process cannot be rushed without violating safety protocols." On the planet below, Dr. Veltar stood in line with thousands of other people. The line stretched for miles through the capital city. People carried bags with their most important things. Children cried. Old people sat on the ground when they got tired. Above them, screens showed forms to fill out. Name, age, job, family members, medical history, criminal record, skills that might be useful. Each person had to be interviewed. Each person had to be approved. "Next," called the registration officer. She was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and 6 arms. Her voice was tired. She had been working for 18 hours. An old Zephyrian man stepped forward. His hands shook as he handed over his papers. "Name? Cordovan. I am a teacher. I have taught children for 40 years. The officer looked at her screen. Age? 73. More typing. More questions. The old man's papers went into a pile with thousands of others. Behind him, the line moved forward one step. Dr. Veltar looked up at the sky. The sun seemed brighter today, angrier. He could feel the heat on his skin, even though the morning was supposed to be cool. In space, the Council ships maintained their perfect formation. Admiral Zixthara walked through the medical bay where her doctors prepared for the evacuees. Everything was clean and organized, beds in neat rows, medicine in labeled containers, forms on clipboards. How many can we process per hour? She asked the chief medical officer. With proper screening, perhaps 200. We must be thorough. Disease could spread through the ship if we rush. Admiral Zixthara nodded. The Council had rules for good reasons. In the past, rushed evacuations had led to problems. Sick people spreading illness, criminals causing trouble, families separated because records were lost. But 200 per hour, 7 ships working together, maybe 3,000 people per hour total. It would take weeks to evacuate everyone, and they only had days. Her thoughts were interrupted by an alarm. Admiral, we have an unknown contact, called the sensor officer. Single ship approaching the system. On the main screen, a dot of light grew larger. At first, it was just a speck. Then it became a shape. Then it became something that made every Council officer stare in shock. The ship that dropped out of hyperspace looked like it had been through a war and lost. The hull was covered with patches of different metals. Some sections were smooth and new. Others were rough and welded together. The front of the ship had scorch marks from weapons fire. One side showed a long scar where something had tried to tear it open. Extra fuel tanks hung from the outside like tumors. Solar panels and communication dishes stuck out at odd angles. The engines glowed too bright, like they were being pushed beyond their limits. What in the 7 hells is that? Whispered Admiral Zixthara. The alien ship, if it could be called that, moved with no grace at all. It flew like a drunk asteroid, listing to one side and belching dark smoke from its engines. Then it started broadcasting. The voice that came through the speakers was rough and loud. It spoke in broken galactic common with an accent no one recognized. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the cargo ship Defiant Scrap. We heard your distress call. Who needs help? Where are the people who need rescue? Admiral Zixthara felt her head tentacles twitch with confusion. Open a channel, she ordered. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Zixthara of the Galactic Humanitarian Council. This system is under Council protection. Please identify your species and state your intentions. There was a pause. Then the rough voice came back, sounding annoyed. Look, Admiral, I don't care about your politics. There are people down there who are going to die. Are you helping them or not? On the Council ship's bridge, officers looked at each other with shock. No one spoke to an admiral that way. No one ignored proper protocols. Unknown Captain, we are conducting a regulated evacuation according to galactic law. All civilians will be processed through proper channels. Please stand by and await instructions. Another pause. This time longer. Processed? Lady, that sun is going to cook this whole system in a few days. How many people have you gotten off the planet so far? Admiral Zixthara checked her reports. We have successfully evacuated 47 individuals in the past 8 hours. The silence from the human ship stretched so long that the Admiral wondered if the connection had been lost. When the voice came back, it was quiet and dangerous. 47. In 8 hours. The human ship moved closer to the planet. Its sensors swept across the surface like searching fingers. Captain Chun, you are entering restricted space. Please return to a safe distance while we complete our assessment. Negative, Admiral. We're going to take a look for ourselves. The ugly ship ignored all warnings and dove toward the planet. Its hull glowed red as it hit the atmosphere. Council protocols said no ship should get that close to a world during a solar storm event. On the surface, People in the registration lines looked up and saw a new star falling from the sky. The ship roared overhead, low enough that they could see its scarred hull and jury-rigged equipment. Dr. Veltar watched it pass and felt something stir in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or fear. The ship looked dangerous, but it also looked determined. In space, Admiral Zixthara watched her sensors and felt her stomachs twist again. The human ship was scanning everything: population centers, transportation hubs, landing sites. It was gathering information that had taken the Council 3 days to collect. "Admiral," called her communication officer, "the human ship is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're talking directly to the people on the planet." The rough voice filled the Council bridge again, but this time it was speaking to the Zephyrians below. "This is Captain Chun. We're here to help. Don't worry about forms or lines or any of that garbage. Just tell us where you are, and we'll come get you." Admiral Zixthara realized that everything was about to change. The humans had arrived, and they clearly did not care about rules, or safety, or common sense, and that made them very dangerous indeed. Sarah Chun sat in the pilot's chair of the Defiant Scrap and watched the planet spin below them. The ship shook as they flew through the upper atmosphere. Warning lights blinked red on every console. "Elena, take us down to the capital city." "Nice and easy." "Define nice and easy," Elena said, wrestling with the controls. "The gravity generators are making weird noises again. Just don't crash us into any buildings." Through the viewports, they could see the massive lines of people stretching across the cities like rivers of desperation. Millions of Zephyrians stood in the heat, waiting for their turn to fill out forms, while their sun grew more dangerous every hour. "Tom, what's our status?" Sarah asked. The engineer looked up from his screens. His face was covered with grease and worry. "We can land, but taking off again is going to be interesting. The engines are running too hot, the fuel mixture is wrong, and something in the cargo bay is making a sound like a dying whale. Can you fix it? Maybe. Give me some time and a lot of luck." Sarah nodded and opened a channel to the planet. "This is Captain Chun calling all Zephyrian emergency services. We need to talk." The response came quickly, a voice filled with stress and exhaustion. "This is Emergency Coordinator Vexan. Captain, the Council ships have told us to only communicate through official channels. We cannot speak with unauthorized vessels. Listen to me, Vexan. I don't care what the Council told you. How many people are actually getting on those ships?" A long pause. "The evacuation is proceeding according to schedule." "That's not what I asked. How many people?" Another pause. When Vexan spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Maybe 300 so far. The processing is very slow. There are many forms to complete." Sarah felt her hands tighten on the armrests of her chair. 300 people in 2 days of work. "How many people live in your capital city?" 2 million. Sarah closed her eyes and counted to 10. When she opened them, her voice was calm but hard as steel. "Vexan, I need you to listen very carefully. We are going to land in your main spaceport in 20 minutes. Start gathering people. Not the ones with the right forms or the right papers. Just people. Families with children, old people, sick people. Anyone who cannot wait in those lines anymore. Captain, I cannot authorize this. The Council has very specific procedures. The Council is going to let most of your people die while they fill out paperwork. We are not." Marcus looked up from his station. "Captain, we're getting a lot of angry messages from the Council ships. Admiral What's-Her-Name wants to talk to you. Put her through." The Admiral's voice filled the bridge. She sounded like a teacher scolding a bad student. "Captain Chun, you are violating numerous galactic regulations. Unauthorized planetary contact. Interference with Council operations. Reckless endangerment of civilian populations. I order you to withdraw from this system immediately." Sarah smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Admiral, with respect, you can take your regulations and shove them out an airlock. There are people down there who are going to die, and we're going to help them. You have no authority here. No jurisdiction. No legal standing. I have a ship and a crew and the will to use them. That's all the authority I need." The defiant scrap broke through the clouds above the capital city. The ship's shadow fell across the endless lines of waiting people. Some looked up and pointed. Others were too tired to care. Admiral Zixthara watched from her command ship and felt her hearts racing. The human vessel was flying patterns that no sane pilot would attempt. It dove between buildings and skinned over crowds with only meters to spare. "They are going to crash," said her navigation officer. "I hope they do," the admiral muttered. But the ugly ship did not crash. It settled onto the main landing pad like a falling brick, crushing the concrete under its weight. Steam rose from its overheated engines. Warning sirens wailed as emergency systems tried to cope with all the damage. The cargo bay doors opened with a screech of metal. Captain Sarah Chun walked down the ramp and saw thousands of Zephyrians staring at her. They were blue-skinned and thin, with large eyes that showed too much fear. Many carried children. Some leaned on walking sticks. All of them looked desperate. Emergency Coordinator Thexan approached her. He was nervous, looking over his shoulder as if expecting the council. "Ships to land and arrest him." "Captain Chun, I do not understand. Your ship is so small. How can you help?" Sarah looked at the crowd of people. Then she looked at her ship. The defiant scrap was not big. It was not pretty, but it was strong. "How many people can your shuttles carry?" she asked. "The council shuttles can carry 50 people each with proper safety equipment and life support." Sarah walked back into her cargo bay. The space was filled with mining equipment and spare parts. But it was also big enough to hold a lot more than 50 people. "Marcus, start pulling out everything we don't absolutely need. Tom, can you rig extra life support?" "How extra?" Tom asked. "Enough for maybe 500 people." Tom's eyes went wide. "Captain, that's crazy. The air recyclers can't handle that many. The gravity generators will overload. The power systems will fail. Can you do it or not?" Tom looked at the crowd of desperate people outside. Then he looked at his tools. "Give me 2 hours. And don't ask me to guarantee anything." While Tom worked, Sarah talked to the Zephyrians. She learned about their families, their fears, their hopes. She learned that the registration process was taking so long because the council wanted to make sure they only saved the right people. The young and healthy. The educated and skilled. The ones with clean records and proper documents. The old. Teacher, Cordovan, had been turned away 3 times because his age made him low priority. Dr. Veltar had been approved for evacuation, but his elderly parents had not. A mother named Sixtel carried a sick child who needed medicine, but the council medical screening would take days. Sarah listened to all of this and felt anger building in her chest like fire. "Elena, get on the comm and start coordinating with other emergency sites. Marcus, help Tom with the life support modifications. And someone find me a way to fit more people in this ship than it was ever designed to hold." Above them, the council. Ships maintained their careful distance and their careful procedures. Admiral Zixthara watched the chaos on the landing pad and shook her head. "They are going to kill themselves and everyone they try to rescue," she said. But down on the planet, for the first time in days, the Zephyrians began to hope. The humans had arrived, and they did not seem to care about impossible odds. The star exploded with fury just as Tom finished welding the last life support connection. Warning alarms screamed across the planet as radiation detectors went crazy. The sky turned orange, then red, then a color that had no name. The temperature began to rise. Dr. Veltar ran to his instruments and felt his heart stop. "The big flare has started," he shouted into his communicator. "All emergency stations, the solar event is beginning now. We have maybe 6 hours before the radiation reaches deadly levels." In space, the Council ships immediately began moving away from the star. Their shields glowed blue as they activated maximum protection. Admiral Zixthara watched her sensors. "And cursed, how many evacuees do we have aboard?" she demanded. 843, Admiral. All properly processed and documented. 800 people. Out of 4 million. "Begin emergency withdrawal to minimum safe distance," she ordered. Her voice was heavy with failure. "What about the remaining population?" Admiral Zixthara looked at the planet growing smaller on her screen. "They will have to wait for the next rescue mission." But on the surface, Captain Sarah Chun was not moving away from anything. "Tom, tell me the life support is ready," she called as she helped elderly Zephyrians up the cargo ramp. "It's ready in the sense that it might work," Tom replied, sweat dripping from his face. "I've got oxygen flowing to 12 different sections. The power grid is held together with spare wire and prayer. If we lose artificial gravity, everyone is going to float around like soup." The cargo bay was packed with people. They sat on the floor, leaned against the walls, and held their children close. Sarah had managed to fit 600 Zephyrians into a space designed for 50 tons of mining equipment. Outside, the radiation storm grew stronger. The Defiant Scrap's hull began to heat up. Warning lights flashed as the ship's systems struggled against the growing energy bombardment. "Elena, can we still fly?" Sarah asked. "Define fly," Alida replied from the pilot's seat. "The engines are working. The navigation computer is confused but functional. The shields are doing something that might be protection. But Captain, we're already taking damage. The radiation is cooking our electronics." Through the cargo bay doors, they could see more people running toward the ship. Hundreds more, thousands more. Families carrying everything they owned. Parents dragging tired children. Old people moving as fast as their legs could carry them. "We can't take any more," Marcus said quietly. "The ship is already overloaded." Sarah looked at the crowd of desperate faces. Then she looked at the growing radiation readings on her tablet. "How long to reach orbit?" 15 minutes if nothing breaks," Elena answered. "And how long before the radiation gets deadly?" Tom checked his instruments. "For people in the open, maybe 30 minutes. For people inside our ship with partial shielding, maybe an hour." Sarah made a decision that any sane person would call. "Suicide. Take us up, but keep the cargo bay doors open." "Captain, that's crazy. The atmospheric pressure will try to suck everyone out into space. Then don't go too high. Stay in the upper atmosphere. Use the tractor beam to pull in the escape pods and shuttles." Alina stared at her captain. "The tractor beam is not designed for that. It's a mining tool. It grabs asteroids, not spaceships. Today it grabs whatever we tell it to grab." The Defiant Scrap lifted off with a roar that shook the ground. The ship climbed slowly, fighting against its massive overload of passengers. And the growing radiation storm, the hull creaked and groaned. Emergency lights flickered on and off in the cargo bay. Dr. Veltar held his parents close and watched the planet fall away beneath them. Through the open doors, he could see other ships trying to escape. Small shuttles, personal vehicles. Anything that could fly was racing for space. "Marcus, get on the comm. Tell every ship down there that we'll help them," Sarah ordered. "Captain, we can barely help ourselves. Do it anyway." The first escape pod appeared on their screens. It was a small civilian shuttle with 50 people inside. The pilot was broadcasting distress calls as his engines failed. "Elena, bring us close. Tom, fire up the tractor beam." The Defiant Scrap moved through the upper atmosphere like a wounded whale. Its mining claw extended and locked onto the failing shuttle. The ship's structure screamed as it took the additional weight. Got it, Tom announced. But the power grid just lost 2 backup systems. Can we pull them into the cargo bay? Not with people still in there. We'll have to tow them. Another shuttle appeared. Then another. Sarah watched the sensors and saw dozens of small ships trying to escape the dying planet. Most would not make it. Their engines were too weak. Their shields were too light. The radiation would kill them before they reached safety. How many can we tow? She asked. I don't know, Tom admitted. The tractor beam was never meant for this. We're already pushing everything beyond safe limits. The second shuttle's engines exploded just as the defiant scrap reached it. Tom managed to grab it with the mining claw, but the dead weight nearly pulled them back toward the planet. Hull temperature is rising, Elena reported. The radiation is getting stronger. And we've got company. On the screen, council ships appeared. In the distance. But they were moving away from the planet, not toward it. Admiral Zixthara's voice crackled through the communications system. Captain Chun, you are in extreme danger. Withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately. Negative. Admiral, we're busy. Your ship cannot survive this radiation level. You will all die. Sarah looked around the cargo bay at the hundreds of faces watching her. Men, women, children, elderly people. All of them trusting her to somehow get them to safety. Maybe, she replied, but not without trying. A third shuttle appeared on the sensors. This one was larger, carrying over 100 people. But its life support was failing, and its hull was cracking under the radiation bombardment. Tom was on his hands and knees, welding power connections while the ship flew through the storm. Elena fought the controls as the overloaded vessel struggled to stay in the air. Marcus coordinated rescue signals from a dozen different sources. The radiation grew stronger. The temperature rose. Warning alarms screamed constantly now, adding their voices to the chaos. But the defiant scrap did not retreat. It moved through the storm like an angry beast, grabbing every ship it could reach and pulling them toward the thin hope of survival. In space, the council ships watched in amazement and terror as the impossible rescue continued. They should be dead already. Admiral Zixthara whispered. Her sensor officer checked his readings twice before speaking. Admiral, their hull temperature is beyond anything our ships could survive. Their radiation exposure is fatal. They should not be able to function. But on the screens, the ugly human ship continued its work. Slow and determined, and apparently too stubborn to die, the Zephyrians began to understand something about these strange aliens. They were not just dangerous because they had weapons or technology. They were dangerous because they refused to accept that anything was impossible. The defiant scrap limped through space like a wounded animal dragging its prey to safety. Behind it, 12 shuttles and escape pods hung from tractor beams and mining claws. Inside its cargo bay, 800 Zephyrians breathed recycled air and prayed to gods they were not sure existed anymore. Tom crawled through the engine room with a welding torch in one hand and a prayer in his heart. Coolant leaked from cracked pipes. Electrical cables sparked and smoked. The radiation had cooked half their systems, but somehow the ship still flew. How are we doing back there? Sarah called through the intercom. We're held together by stubbornness and spite, Tom replied, sealing another crack in the hull. The main engines are running at 200% of safe capacity. The life support is working on 5 different backup systems. And something in the cargo bay is definitely on fire. Can you put it out? I'm trying, but I only have 2 hands. Dr. Veltar stood up from where he'd been sitting with his parents. I can help, he said in broken human English. I am scientist. I understand machines. Tom looked at the blue-skinned alien and nodded. Grab that fire extinguisher, the red cylinder, and try not to breathe the smoke. Working together, they fought the small fires that bloomed throughout the ship. Veltar learned that humans built their machines differently. Where Zephyrian technology was elegant and efficient, human technology was tough and redundant. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. When those failed, the humans just welded new parts onto the old ones. "Your ship should not work," Veltar said as they patched a hole in the oxygen recycler. "Most days it doesn't," Tom replied. "But it's too stupid to know when to quit." On the bridge, Elena fought to keep them on course. The ship's navigation computer had been fried by radiation, so she was flying by instinct and stubbornness. The rescued shuttles dragged behind them like a chain of children following their mother. "Sarah, we've got a problem," Marcus called from his station. One of the shuttles we're towing just lost life support. 80 people on board. They've got maybe 10 minutes of air left. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The shuttle was damaged and too far away to bring into the cargo bay. But she could see another option. "Elena, can you put us into a spin? Make the tractor beam swing that shuttle around to our port airlock? That's a crazy idea, Captain. The stresses could tear us apart. Tom, can the ship handle it?" Tom's voice came through the speakers, tired but determined. "Probably not. But let's try anyway." The Defiant scrap began to rotate slowly on its axis. The rescued shuttles swung out like beads on a string. The damaged shuttle moved closer to the main ship, but the maneuver put enormous stress on the tractor beam systems. Warning alarms screamed as metal bent beyond its limits. But somehow, the shuttle reached the airlock. Sarah suited up and went outside to manually connect the two ships. In the vacuum of space, with radiation cooking the metal around her, she welded an emergency seal between the shuttle and her ship. 80 more people crawled through the connection into the overcrowded cargo bay. "How many people do we have now?" she asked when she got back inside. Marcus counted quickly. "About 1,500. Maybe more. They're packed in there like cargo." 1,500 people in a ship designed for a crew of 4. But they were alive. Behind them, the planet Kepler 442b died in fire. The solar flare stripped away the atmosphere and boiled the oceans. The cities where millions had lived became glowing craters. In a few hours, the world went from a garden to a wasteland. Admiral Zixthara watched it happen from her safe distance. Her ships had saved 800 people with their careful procedures and proper protocols. The humans had saved 1,500 with welding torches and sheer bloody-minded determination. "Admiral," her communication officer said quietly, "the human ship is broadcasting again." Sarah's voice filled the council bridge, but this time she was not talking to them. She was broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, sending a message out into the galaxy. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Defiant Scrap. We just pulled 1,500 people off a dying world. The Galactic Council saved 800. That means 3 million people are dead because bureaucrats care more about paperwork than lives." "Admiral." Zixthara felt her stomachs twist. "Cut the transmission." "I cannot, Admiral. They are broadcasting on civilian channels. The whole galaxy can hear this." Sarah's voice continued, hard and angry and full of grief. "To anyone listening, this is what humanity looks like. We don't have the prettiest ships or the best technology. We don't follow all the rules or fill out all the forms. But when people need help, we help them. We don't ask if they deserve it. We don't check their paperwork. We just do whatever it takes." The transmission paused. When it continued, Sarah's voice was quieter but somehow more dangerous. "The Council calls us dangerous. They say we're reckless and violent and unpredictable. They're right, we are dangerous. We're dangerous to anyone who thinks forms are more important than lives. We're dangerous to anyone who chooses safety over compassion. We're dangerous to anyone who would rather follow rules than save children." On the Defiant Scrap, Dr. Veltar listened to the human captain and understood something important. His people had always thought the galaxy was divided between civilized species and barbaric ones. between the peaceful and the violent, between the safe and the dangerous. But he was wrong. The galaxy was divided between those who cared more about procedures than people, and those who would risk everything to help a stranger. The humans were dangerous, yes, but they were dangerous in the way a parent was dangerous when protecting their child. Dangerous in the way a friend was dangerous when defending someone they loved. Dangerous in the way that good people became dangerous when faced with evil. Sarah's broadcast ended with words that would spread across the galaxy and change how every species looked at humanity. This is the human ship Defiant Scrap, carrying 1,500 survivors of Kepler 442b. We are heading for the nearest safe harbor. Our engines are failing. Our hull is cracked. Our life support is held together with wire and hope. But we're alive, and so are the people we saved. A pause. Then the final message. Anyone else out there need help? Because we're humans. Helping people is what we do. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Admiral Zixthara realized that everything had changed. The Council had rules and procedures and perfect safety records. But the humans had something more important. They had hearts that refused to let strangers die. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Defiant Scrap limped toward safety, carrying its impossible cargo of survivors. Behind it, a world burned. Ahead of it, the stars waited with new people to save and new impossible rescues to attempt, because that was what humans did. They helped. They saved. They refused to accept that anyone was beyond rescue, and they did it all. In ships held together by stubbornness and spite, crewed by people too stupid to know when to quit. The galaxy would never be the same.